I'm in the middle of my incredibly ambitious embroidery series and decided it was high time I actually recorded the creation process of some of these pieces. Here I'll be demonstrating how I created this portrait of Her Majesty Elizabeth I. I begin by sketching out my design on the calico. Please note that I'm not at all a neat person and change my mind about what features or dress my ladies will be wearing more often than not, so I always draw on the reverse side of the calico. Please make a note that if you choose to follow this advice, anything you draw will be reversed on the other side. The source image I'm referring to for this portrait is the painting most widely known as Queen Elizabeth I dancing with Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, possibly by Marcus Gheeraerts? Help me, Flemish people. Just to note, this image may not indeed be a painting of Queen Elizabeth I dancing with Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, as modern thinking is now of the opinion that the title was added later as a means of Catholic haters to tarnish a lady's reputation. I'm gonna hazard a guess that even if this is just an attempt at throwing some 16th century shade, that Elizabeth I wouldn't give a damn. You do you go. After hooping up the calico, I begin things by stitching the outline with black embroidery thread. Threads are normally groups of 6 threads together, so for this part I split them into 2 separate groups of 3. I found this to be the best thing for portraits of this size, as it means the line isn't too thick and I can get better detail out that way. And it also saves on thread. The first thing I always start with is the eyes and facial features for some reason. I'm not sure why I do this, it's just an automatic thing I've always done. The eyes in particular are quite difficult because they tend to be so small and fiddly, and a lot of the facial expression and personality of the individual are dependent on how they turn out. So I guess it's better to start with the eyes and nose than everything else. Sometimes I'll also do the outline of the hair, but I think in this case it's not necessary because the hair here is going to be very curly and a bit three-dimensional. The next stage after the outline is to fill in the skin, which is the most tiring and off-putting, boring part of the whole process, but it is necessary to complete it at this stage. Trying to fill in skin colour before clothes, and in particular any three-dimensional hair, is a nightmare, so best to get it over and done with, and it is very rewarding when you finally finish it. The hair here is going to mimic the quintessential Queen Elizabeth heart-shaped hair, and I'll be making it extra curly. Produce this big red Tudor clown wig in sewing form. Take up your most gingery colour, and as you go to dip the needle back into the calico, wrap the thread around the needle from the point. I've been told that there's a word for this kind of stitch, French stitch or French something stitch. As you pull it back through the calico, it should leave you some nice curls behind. Once the hair and skin are ready, it's time to put her in some clothes. For this, I've got some lovely pink cotton print that I picked up from my neighbour's haberdashers, which was another thing that goaded me into recreating the pink Volta dress in the Gheeraerts painting. This is an applique technique, and I hate doing applique even though it probably saves a lot of time and precious threads. Take the fabric, cut out the shapes of the gown pieces that you will need to cover. You need to fold the edge of the fabric against the outline and sew it down. I'm going against the source image here, and I'm adding these little slits that you see in many Elizabethan dresses that run down the sleeves, allowing tantalising glimpses of the fabric beneath. I think this will just break up the fabric a bit more, so it's not just one block of colour, and adds to the extravagance level I'm going for. And also, I hate myself fervently and want to give myself more grief. I tend not to usually add any padding to any of the portraits because it risks the face of the image looking way too flat if I have everything around it too three-dimensional. However, as it is Elizabeth I, I think we need to harness all extravagance, and the sleeves of this period were extra puffy, so fairs. As you can see, I didn't quite get the right size when I was cutting around the collar. Fortunately, because it's going to be covered by a great big ruff, it's not quite the disaster it could have been. Here's a tip: it's always better to have too much than too little. It's at this point you should finish any facial features or other details that might be difficult with a big ruff in the way. Here I'm just filling in the eyes, lips and brows. As you can see, I've chosen to give my Elizabeth eyebrows, as they do seem to be present in the source image from what I can tell, which if so means the painting could be from before her brush with smallpox that saw her pasting her face with that good old lead-based foundation that melted off her eyebrows, suspiciously just in time for eyebrows to go out of fashion. That was lucky. As any fleeting glance at Elizabeth I's portraiture will tell you, she was somewhat big on her pearls. Now it's time for the scariest part of this whole piece, the ruff. So I did a couple of experiments overnight where I was trying to make the ruff have its little wobbly pleats, and yeah, because I need them to stretch from like the bottom to the top, and if I just try and sew them in then it just all fans out, whereas they need to stay consistent from bottom to top. So tragically I tried with spray mount and PVA, but the only thing that seemed to do it in any shape or form was candle wax, which I was really hoping wouldn't be the case because it's an absolute nightmare. I have to make sure that it's all spread very lightly and consistently before it all dries, otherwise you just get like loads of it coming off. So this is where the experiment part begins and the tutorial part ends, but let's see if we can do this. Despite my best efforts, the wax did go all chunky as I attempted to spread it thinly over the pleats. This is not cool, as it means this particular portrait is now doomed forever to crumble wax wherever it goes. The fabric I'm using for the ruff wasn't what I had in mind, but it is all I had available to me in lockdown, so it's a bit more chunky and the pattern is a bit bigger than I'd have preferred, but let's see what we can do with it. If anyone has a better idea for doing this, please share your thoughts. With dried candle wax raining down upon me, stitch it against the collar line. This teeny weeny crucifix here is one that was part of some jewellery eons ago in childhood that has been hanging around in my bead collection ever since. I was struggling quite a bit with how to make this hat, as the portraits don't really show clearly what they are, so I decided to just keep it simple and cut out a piece of lace in the shape of these little Elizabethan head thingies. Elizabethan dress tip. If in doubt, throw pearls at it. So all in all, this piece took about 3 days in total. I'm not 100% happy with her. I think there's a few things I would have done differently, but I think she turned out okay.